The capture. First, do no harm. The screaming never stopped on the battlefield of Mardak IV. Explosions ripped across the cratered landscape, lighting the sulphurous sky in bursts of orange and violet. The air was thick with ash and plasma residue, choking the lungs of those still breathing. For Lieutenant Evelyn Shaw, none of that mattered. Her hands were deep in the chest cavity of a wounded sergeant, working with practiced calm. "Clamp," she barked. Her assistant, a young cadet barely out of training, fumbled to pass the tool. The man beneath her gurgled in pain. "Stay with me, Mendez," Evelyn muttered. "You don't get to die yet." She had stabilized 3 others before him, dragging them from the wreckage of a downed gunship under heavy fire. Her knees ached, her armor was scorched, and her trauma kit was nearly empty. But the only thing she focused on was the rhythm of the heart in front of her. Then came the tremor, not from above but below. A low-frequency vibration rattled the bones in her chest. A second later, the ground split open and a monstrous shape emerged. Sleek, 6-limbed, armored in organic plating. Drazari shock trooper. The cadet screamed. Evelyn did not. The Drazari advanced, weapons raised. Her coalition squad was already decimated. Reinforcements were a myth. The cadet dropped his sidearm. Evelyn didn't move. "I'm unarmed," she said firmly, still pressing gauze into Mendez's chest. The alien hesitated. Its 4 eyes narrowed. "I'm a medic," she added. "A non-combatant." To the Drazari, that term meant nothing. Their culture didn't spare healers. They enslaved them, dissected them. Their battlefield code was brutality. But Evelyn knew one universal truth in war: hesitation. She pressed her hand against Mendez's heart, sending the last of her portable stem serum into his bloodstream. His vitals steadied. Then the butt of a rifle struck her temple, and everything went dark. Evelyn awoke in a biostasis cell, her body stiff, her head pounding. The air smelled sterile, metallic. Alien. She sat up slowly. Her uniform had been replaced by a skin-tight, white med suit. A monitoring collar pulsed against her throat. One wall of the cell was transparent. Beyond it stood a cluster of Drazari scientists, murmuring in clicks and low hisses. A voice crackled overhead, synthesized and cold. "You are human designation, medical class. You performed triage under active fire. Explain." Evelyn blinked. "He was dying. You risked your own survival for a single injured soldier." "I'm a medic," she said. "That's my job." There was a pause. Then static. Inefficient. Illogical. Intriguing. Days passed. Or weeks. Time blurred. They never tortured her. Not physically. But the interrogations were relentless. Biometric scans, neuromapping, psychological profiling. They studied her healing techniques, her medical instincts. Drazari doctors, cold, brilliant, inhuman, demanded she demonstrate on wounded soldiers. She refused at first, until they brought in a dying coalition prisoner. "You help him," the lead researcher hissed, "or we disassemble him for study." She saved the man, then another, then a Drazari with a collapsed lung. Eventually, they gave her a lab and assistance. She began to learn their physiology, complex but familiar in pattern. Like humans, they bled. Like humans, they feared death. She adapted. Her hands moved with cold precision. Her voice lost its tremble. She stopped flinching at alien screams. And as the Drazari grew fascinated, they made one critical mistake. They assumed she was broken. One night, if time even had meaning there, Evelyn stared at her reflection in the glass wall of her cell. Her eyes were sunken, but sharp. Her fingers, once shaking with fear, now held a scalpel like a sculptor's chisel. She remembered the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. She'd upheld it. But now she saw the truth. Healing could be a weapon. Fear, just another tool in a medic's kit. The Drazari thought they'd capture a specimen. They were creating something else. Something they would come to fear. The experiment, blood and knowledge. The sterile white light of the Drazari med lab buzzed overhead, humming with an almost eerie calm. Evelyn Shaw stood at a metal table, her fingers steady despite the tension coiling beneath her skin. Before her lay a Drazari soldier, massive and armored in sinewy plates, gasping shallow breaths through a punctured lung. The lead researcher, a tall, angular Drazari with shimmering black scales, watched intently from behind a wall of translucent bioglass. His clicking voice echoed through the chamber speakers. Your healing techniques are alien, yet effective. Explain your methodology. Evelyn inhaled. Stop the bleeding first, then stabilize the airway. Restore oxygen flow. Finally, manage pain to prevent shock. The researcher's eyes narrowed in curiosity. You emphasize pain management, yet your species endures agony without hesitation. Evelyn pressed a sterile clamp to the wound, sealing torn tissue. We endure pain because we care for others. The human will to protect those we love gives us strength. For months, she had been their prisoner, their subject. But something had shifted. The Drazari didn't understand mercy. They saw wounds as data points, lives as expendable units. Evelyn's refusal to accept this cold calculus unsettled them and intrigued them. She had learned their language through observation and the limited lessons forced upon her. Their science was advanced, yes, but rigid and unyielding. Their healing relied on brute nanotech repairs and biological augmentation, efficient but mechanical. Evelyn was different. She infused compassion into medicine, blending cutting-edge tech with intuition, knowledge born from years of battlefield chaos. And so, day by day, the Drazari began to rely on her. One evening, after an exhausting cycle of triage and experimental treatments, Evelyn was summoned to the observation chamber. The lead researcher approached, his expression unreadable. You have improved our casualty recovery rates by 27%. We offer collaboration. She met his gaze evenly. I didn't come here to collaborate. I'm here to survive and to heal. He hesitated, then revealed a small device, a cluster of microscopic nanites designed to repair cellular damage at unprecedented speeds. Integrate these with your methods. Teach our medics. Evelyn took the device, weighing it carefully. Their technology was impressive, but cold. She knew how to bend it, to make it more human. Back in her cell lab, she began combining the Drazari nanites with human biochemistry. She tweaked protocols, reprogrammed their behavior to respond not just to injury, but to immune system feedback. Her experiments were secret. The researchers expected obedience, not innovation. She also began to observe the Drazari themselves, their physiology, their weaknesses, their culture. They boasted resilience, but lacked adaptability. Their emotions were tightly controlled, suppressed beneath layers of ritual and hierarchy. Humans were different, unpredictable, driven by empathy and stubborn hope. That difference was her weapon. Her transformation was gradual, but profound. Evelyn grew colder, sharper. No longer the frightened prisoner, she became a calculated strategist who wielded healing as power. She healed not just wounds, but manipulated biology, accelerating cell regeneration in ways that could revive soldiers from near death, but also weaponizing pain receptors to incapacitate enemies. Her hands moved with precise confidence, her mind always calculating outcomes. The Drazari's pride in their perfect control began to crack. One day, a young Drazari recruit was brought in, his arm shattered and bleeding. Evelyn worked quickly, applying modified nanites that she had reprogrammed overnight. The recruit's arm healed rapidly, so rapidly that the soldiers watching gasped. But then, she injected a subtle neural inhibitor, a compound that dulled pain but left muscles temporarily paralyzed. The recruit's arm twitched but failed to respond. The lead researcher's eyes widened. What have you done? Evelyn met him calmly. I've enhanced your medicine and added safeguards. Healing is power, but power must be controlled. The Drazari stared at her, a flicker of unease breaking their usual composure. They had captured a healer, but now they faced something else, a force that could heal, harm, and command in equal measure. That night, Evelyn lay on the cold metal bench in her cell, staring at the ceiling. She wasn't just surviving. She was evolving. The healer they had broken was gone. In her place stood a new weapon, born of blood, science, and will. She whispered to herself, a vow buried deep. They will fear what I can do with the scalpel. The escape, the scalpel, and the sword. The warship trembled as the coalition fleet struck its flank. Alarms blared throughout the Drazari vessel, flashing crimson warnings in every corridor. Evelyn Shaw was already moving. Her cell door, once an impenetrable barrier of biosensor locks and reinforced alloys, was now unlocked. The medbay's security protocols have been subtly disabled over the last weeks, thanks to modifications she implanted in the nanite swarms running through the ship's systems. She slipped into the dimly lit hallway, heart steady, mind razor-sharp. This was her moment. In the medbay, rows of wounded Drazari soldiers lay groaning under harsh lights. Some clutched shattered limbs. Others were unconscious, their bodies stitched with crude repairs. Evelyn moved quickly. She approached a towering Drazari commander, his 4 eyes glazed, a plasma burn searing his shoulder. "Lieutenant Shaw," he hissed weakly. "Why are you here?" She smiled cold. "To heal," she said, but her hands were anything but gentle. With practiced precision, she injected a dose of hyperstimulant serum into his neck. His eyes snapped open, bright, painful, wild. Then, with a subtle flick, she released the neurotoxin she had synthesized from the Drazari's own biology. It spread rapidly, disrupting nerve signals. The commander convulsed, paralyzed but alive. Around her, other soldiers began to stir, but not with relief. Evelyn's nanites, now programmed to attack hostile biologies selectively, spread through their wounds and bloodstreams, overloading their systems. This was no ordinary healing. It was a weapon disguised as mercy. She moved through the med bay like a surgeon in a storm, wielding nanite swarms that could heal broken bones in minutes or reduce muscles to useless spasms with equal ease. Every healed soldier was a trap, every restored limb a ticking time bomb. Within minutes, alarms shifted from red to chaotic blinking. Drazari medics scrambled, but Evelyn was faster. She hacked into the ship's medbay systems with a stolen keycard, overriding lockdowns and sealing doors behind her. Her plan was simple: escape and cripple the ship's medical support. Without it, the wounded soldiers would succumb quickly, and the coalition fleet would gain the advantage. In the ship's main corridor, Evelyn encountered 2 shock troopers. They raised weapons, but she was ready. With a quick motion, she released a cloud of nanites into the air. The swarm entered their respiratory systems, triggering muscle paralysis and leaving them gasping silently. The door to the docking bay was close now. Her pulse quickened. Behind her, footsteps and angry shouts grew louder. She reached the bay and sprinted toward a small dropship, overriding its control panel in seconds. The engines hummed to life. As the ship shook from incoming fire, Evelyn fired the thrusters and launched into the void. Behind her, the Drazari warship convulsed, crippled by the medical sabotage she had wrought. She watched through the viewport as the coalition fleet began their assault, taking advantage of the chaos. Hours later, the dropship landed on a coalition cruiser. Evelyn stepped onto the deck, exhausted but triumphant. A group of coalition soldiers greeted her, weapons raised in surprise. "Lieutenant Shaw," one said breathlessly, "we thought you were lost." She smiled faintly. "Not lost," she corrected. "Just late." In the debriefing room, Evelyn recounted her ordeal. Her captors had expected a broken prisoner. Instead, they had created a healer who could kill without a weapon. Her knowledge of alien biology, combined with her hybrid medical techniques, made her uniquely dangerous. The coalition command listened, stunned. "Your experience gives us a new edge," a commander said. "We'll put you back in the field, where you belong." Evelyn nodded. "I heal," she said simply. "But now, I fight with my scalpel as much as with my rifle." That night, alone in her quarters, Evelyn examined the small vial she carried. A sample of modified nanites, her signature weapon. They could heal a soldier from the brink of death, or silently end a life with microscopic precision. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from power. She was no longer just a medic. She was a force, and the galaxy would soon learn to fear the healer who brings death. The legend, the healer who brings death. Months had passed since Evelyn's daring escape, but her reputation had already grown beyond anything she could have imagined. The coalition reinstated her, but not behind a desk or in a quiet hospital bay. Evelyn demanded to return to the front lines, to the shadows where war was raw and survival meant bending rules. She formed a small, elite unit, a mobile field team operating deep behind enemy lines. Their mission was simple but brutal: rescue coalition soldiers, sabotage Drazari operations, and leave a mark so terrifying it would haunt the enemy's nightmares. They called her the Scalpel. Her methods were surgical, precise, and merciless. When Evelyn healed a soldier, it was never just to save a life, it was to gain leverage. She would bring wounded Drazari prisoners back from the brink with nanites and biotech, then quietly extract information from them. When they served their purpose, she delivered painless death through targeted neurodisruptors. The enemy whispered to the human healer who could fix anyone, only to turn the gift into a curse. On one particularly grim morning, Evelyn's unit intercepted a Drazari warlord notorious for his ruthless campaigns. The warlord was gravely ill, an incurable disease eating away at his organs. Instead of attacking outright, Evelyn did the unexpected. She approached him alone, med kit in hand, and said, "I can save you, but you must listen." The warlord's eyes flashed with suspicion, but desperation won out. She worked through the night, her hands steady as she injected a cocktail of advanced nanites and biomodifiers. By dawn, the warlord was breathing easier. His skin lost its pallor. Strength returned to his limbs. The Drazari were stunned. But mercy was a double-edged scalpel. Evelyn's final act was not healing alone. As the warlord rose, she activated a neural pulse hidden within the nanites, crippling his army's central nervous systems in an instant. His soldiers collapsed like dominoes. The warlord's relief twisted into rage, but it was too late. This victory marked a turning point. Drazari forces began surrendering in increasing numbers, fearful of facing the Scalpel. Coalition diplomats used her legend to negotiate peace, reminding the Drazari leadership that their greatest fear was not death, but what Evelyn represented. Healing turned weapon, compassion fused with lethal precision. When the war finally ended, a treaty was signed. One clause stood out above all others: no harm shall come to medical personnel of any species. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Evelyn vanished from public life soon after. Some said she retired to a quiet planet. Others whispered she was training the next generation of hybrid medics in secret. What remained was the legacy etched in the walls of the Drazari capital, a chilling warning carved in ancient script. We bleed for peace, but we can also bleed you. In quiet moments, Evelyn reflected on how far she'd come, from a captured medic on a dying battlefield to the most feared healer alive. She was no longer just human. She was legend.